That is dedication. Props to Beans. Dear my audience, follow Beans' example. Like waiting on the dime. Beans. Okay, I am live as well. So shall we get started with this? Hello everyone. My name is Jejitel and welcome to another Pod Squad stream with KP. And we have Georgie yet again with us. She's filling in with a sick Rhea. We hope Rhea gets well really soon. It's definitely we have felt the difference of Rhea this week, her being sick. She's not herself, but we hope her a speedy recovery and that she gets well very soon. But thank you, Georgie, for filling in as usual. You're definitely a sound replacement when we need you the most. But today we'll be talking about coral reefs and kelp forests. I think this, personally, if I can get started, I think this is one of the most underrated topics because it's one of those sort of like real urgent things that we need to look at in terms of the ocean. And a lot of it was always on pollution and fish population and decreasing that. And yes, those are all valuable things. And then a lot of the time, coral reefs and kelp forests get overlooked. Yet when you find out about them, which I hope that we find out today, it's like, what is happening? It's actually quite scary, but it's also something I think that we can also learn a lot about. So maybe, KP, you can start us off with your experience with kelp and coral reefs, if there's anything that you want to add.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like this is going to be kind of more like a we learn sort of together. Obviously,
Yes.
I have more experience with animals that live in like coral reefs and colder, or not, sorry, coral reefs, kelp forests and colder areas like that, because kelp forests tend to be more of a northern hemisphere type of thing. But yeah, I mean, I'm definitely a diver, and and all of these things are interesting to me, but especially obviously kelp forests and the implications of what that means, and they're closely related to sea otters. I think that all sort of resonates with all of us. But yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, have you ever gone diving in either a coral reef or a kelp
Yeah, I mean,
forest?
I've actually done more open water diving in warm temperatures, believe it or not, but I am not suited for like cold
Yes.
temperatures for extended periods of time. So I've actually never been diving in the ocean here in the Pacific Northwest. I dive a lot at work, which is cold, but I've never actually like done it for fun. But I hear it's got some amazing diving, and I think it'd be really neat to see some of the things. But yeah, it's definitely I do have sorry, my alerts are loud and obnoxious. But it's definitely I have dove in coral reefs and areas like that. I was certified in Hawaii.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, and been diving around like Belize and stuff like that. But yeah, so it's kind of funny. Like I feel more strongly connected to kelp forests for some reason, but I've never actually dove there. I'm much more of a warm water person.
I can just imagine like you diving, like, look over there. I'm like, it's cold. I am not paying attention. But is it the sort of like life? I mean, everyone saws like the city of sea life when you've dove in coral reefs. I mean, is it something that is like you can actually see the life that is teeming around the coral reefs?
Oh yeah, I mean, especially down in Belize, we dove. Actually, it was mostly free diving, so without the use of extra air or anything like that. And we're seeing things like barracuda and eels, and just some really neat life around there, sea turtles, and all that kind of stuff. But also being very like, I remember going down there and being very aware of the fact that like you can almost see like the sunscreen pouring off of people, right? And you just know that it's like going down and damaging the reefs, and there's just there's such a fragile and important ecosystem. So yeah, it's definitely I love diving in those places, but it's I feel like it's a fine balance between like diving there
Yes.
and like observing and appreciating the environment, as well as not disturbing it or trying not to in as much as humanly possible.
Absolutely. And there's actually there's a type question that Georgie will provide later. So guys, stay tuned when we're talking about sunscreen and that. But let's hit it off with the first question there from Georgie's side. Georgie, you want to get us started off with our questions about kelps and corals. By the way, before we start, anyone else, if you still got questions, please put it in chat. If you've got new questions for us, put it in chat. But we'll just steam along so far with the questions that we have.
Sure. The first question is, besides sea otters, what other animals use kelp forests?
Oh man, it's just like any animal uses kelp forests, really. And even though we know that sea urchins like eat the kelp in the kelp forest, that
Yes.
makes the kelp forests still very important to sea urchin populations. All kinds of fish will use them because they tend to be a little bit more of a sheltered area, sheltered slightly from the currents
Yes.
and sheltered from like the view of predators. So like having fish, like young fish, fish fry, and those types of animals
Yes.
use that area. And so for fish nurseries, it's extremely important. And if you don't have those types of areas, then you don't have adult fish later on in their lives. And that's just like it goes up and up and up through the food chain. And any kind of you know sea stars and octopus and all of your other invertebrates are using that area. And then not to mention that plays a role for predators too.
Yes.
When you've got really strong prey numbers, then you can have really strong predator numbers too, and it's all just connected. But yeah, I mean, those. I think probably the most important thing is that they play a role as nursery grounds for young animals, which is really important because otherwise the open ocean is not really like usually
Suitable, especially for
lend
those
itself.
nurseries. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, I mean, it's just a nice sheltered area to grow up. Looks like a lovely place, and we're watching on my screen right now.
Yeah, I always have that. But isn't that falls straight into that subject? Maybe you can give us a little bit detail of something about. Isn't that why otters are a keystone species? Because obviously we've seen how kelp forests have been completely destroyed by purple urchins. Yes, purple is an evil color. Purple urchins because there's been no otters. I mean, is that the primary reasons why otters are a keystone species?
Yeah, I mean, well, we all know that otters have incredibly voracious appetites. So
Joey.
I think it's the fact that they are not only is their favorite food a sea urchin, which is very damaging to the kelp forest, but they eat so many of them. A sea otter
Yes.
can eat, hundreds of sea urchins in a day. So I feel like it's their enormous appetites that really
Makes them so important.
yeah, absolutely. So yeah, I mean, they are incredibly important, and that's I think why a lot of like organizations as well as like governments are, they were reintroduced here in BC in the 1980s, and then there are several places off the coast of Northern California as well as Oregon, which is actually who we're going to be doing our next charity event
I'm so
with
excited. Yes.
yeah, it's going to be fun. The Alaka Alliance is looking at reintroducing sea otters off the coast of Oregon, and this has it has far-reaching consequences, not just for and I mean consequences is like a good thing. I should have said maybe just effects for the environment, because you introduce sea otters, they're going to keep down the sea urchin population, which is going to hopefully help kelp to take hold and start to grow. The fish population should boom after that.
Yes.
So these are things that that I think are really important, and this is part of their historical range. But yeah, that's why sea otters are so important. They just really help to keep that balance. I mean, obviously, what we're watching right now is an aquarium where they haven't introduced sea urchins to this area because
Yeah.
they don't want them to eat all of their kelp. But you can just see like the diversity of life that can be found in these types of areas.
But I
And
think,
that's mostly because of sea otters.
yes, just I wish my appetite or hunger was some sort of contribution to nature. But it's,
Right?
it's like Joey is actually a real superhero. If we
Yeah.
wish my
No, I mean,
appetites.
for sure. Yeah, it's definitely like life goals that somebody that like the world relies on your appetite. Like
Yes. Has there been, if from your own knowledge, obviously, like I said, we're learning together. Has there any been sort of improvements since the resurgence of otter numbers, since they've been put into protections in terms of kelp forests and things like that? Is it something that has been immediately significant, or is it going to take quite a long time that these destroyed habitats of kelp forests actually improve?
yeah, it takes a little while, but I don't think that I think you can really quickly sort of grasp the like the change that's happening in some of these places. And maybe like real time watching might seem a little bit slow, but we've got the backup of like the British Columbia coast is a great example. The Southern California coast, also a great example of where sea otters were reintroduced, and you can now find really dense kelp forests and
Nice.
diverse wildlife down there. And I think there's been some studies out. In fact, I just posted on my Instagram story. There was a group of like 6 scientists who put together a lot of this type of information, and you can click on that post via my Instagram story. But that was basically put together by the Alaka Alliance, which we've been talking about, because they are trying to spread the information. Because I think there's also, I mean, reintroduction is, and this is at the risk of like we're just going to fly off the handle and go on a completely different tangent, which is fine.
Yeah, of
how
course.
this
This
works,
is how
but-
we do.
yeah. But like reintroduction, I feel like sometimes is kind of a dirty word, because there are times when people have been like introducing, I mean, there's so many instances of sort of like what's the word for when a species, invasive species, that's what the word I'm looking for, like invasive species are introduced to areas and they just like completely wreak havoc on the world. And so I feel like there's a lot of misinformation that has to be battled surrounding that. For instance, like we actually have plans to talk about this in a upcoming YouTube video, but they wanted to like introduce hippos to rivers in North America and like stuff like
What?
that. So
Oh my
yeah,
God.
that's a true story. We're gonna talk about it, but yeah, so and you hear about all these things, this like the cane toad and a
Yes.
number of other animals that are wreaking havoc on certain areas. And yeah, like Joe's saying in my chat, a lot of this time is happening in Australia for whatever reason.
Out of all the
but,
places. Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, so I feel like people are hesitant because of that. Like, why, we already have a nice Oregon coast. Why should we introduce, an animal? And it's sort of like, having to sort of distance yourself from introducing invasive species to introducing native species that this was traditionally
I was about
part
to
of their
say,
range.
yeah, what did they actually exist there previously and that sort of thing? I mean,
Yeah.
I feel that should be fair. But I mean, hasn't America learned from bees, African bees? Stop trying to reintroduce things that weren't born there. Then we have the issue that's gone on there.
Yeah.
But just a follow-up question to that, which is actually from the chat, is do otters never eat too many urchins? Or do they eat enough to keep the balance? Are there actually enough otters to even impact?
Yeah, no, it's a great question, but urchins breed like
Yes.
they're broadcast breeders. So essentially they just like send up like a floof of
Yeah,
like their
ploof.
of their essence. Yeah, and then it combines with everybody else, and then it just makes like thousands of more little sea urchins. So sea urchins are very prolific. I don't think there's a risk of sea otters like consuming all of the sea urchins, because what happens is like not everywhere up and down the coast is kelp forest, right? Like
Yes.
there are some areas that don't have this because the sea urchins have taken over. So then what happens is, like, if a sea otter is in an area where they've now got really nice kelp forests and not as many sea urchins, they'll move a little bit further and
Yes.
find more sea urchins. And then in that way, like, kelp forests can kind of keep spreading. And then the areas where the sea otters moved out of, maybe sea urchins will move back in, start eating some of the kelp forest, and then they'll have to move back. And it's just like this
constant cycle.
Yeah, this total balancing act that nature does. And so I've never really heard of sea urchins being overfished. But I'm, correct me if I'm wrong, if anybody knows. But yeah, I mean, the other thing too is you guys can eat sea urchins too.
Yes, I heard that.
think
I'm like,
sea urchins are
ugh.
delicious.
Really?
Yeah.
They delicious.
Oh gosh, yes. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah,
that
no,
is
they're-
news to me.
They're absolutely delicious. And you just have to get over what you're eating, I think, a little bit. And you have to eat them in the proper season. So eaten in the, in the season of usually winter time is the best time for them, and they're so fresh and so tasty.
Oh
But
my
yeah,
gosh.
it's a little bit of a texture thing, so you just have to prepare yourself for it. But anyway, you can help the environment. Eat sea urchins.
Yes. Although Joey might be very upset when he finds out. It's like, those are mine. But
Yeah, so they taste. So if you're curious,
Yeah.
you eat them raw essentially, and like, not going, or you can also make them broken saying uni risotto. That sounds delicious. But basically, they are the gonad of the sea urchin. But everybody needs to get over it. Eat gonads. Gonads are delicious. And they're extremely creamy. It's like ocean butter.
creamy.
Like,
Okay.
yeah. So you just have to prepare yourself for the texture. I always say try everything twice, because the first time you're gonna be like, what? And then the next time, you should be a little
Yeah,
more
everyone's
prepared.
like,
But
we'll take your word for
it
it.
honestly has like the texture of like really rich ice cream.
Holy Moses. Okay.
And it tastes like the ocean. Is delicious. If you like seafood, you'll like sea urchin. I promise.
Oh my gosh. I'm on my side. I'm like, you know what? The otters can have all my urchins, and I'm allergic to seafood, so I'm gonna play it safe. Okay.
Oh man, I really like it, but
Wow. Crunch,
but yeah,
crunch.
I do understand it takes a little, like, your first time is probably not going to be your favorite, but that's why you should try everything twice.
Okay. With that.
JJ's like, nah.
It's like, I'll leave my urchins where they belong, on Joey's belly. But Alexa, everyone's on my chat. Gonads! Yeah, it's like, yes, we mentioned gonads. We went there. It's
Also,
fine.
I should clarify my chat's like, try everything twice unless you're allergic. Yes. Please don't try everything twice if you happen to have a serious allergic reaction to something. Disclaimer.
Yes, disclaimer, please. It's like, that's why I wouldn't try it. So, obviously, with education people, I don't think we should have to tell anyone that at this point of our lives. It's like, if we're
No.
telling people that they must have it. But, okay. So, let's move on to the next question. But while I put on the next question, I'm going to show my chat what happens, how fast urchins actually breed. Yes. No, I'm not actually showing the breeding process as well, by the way, chat. It's just...
Well, it's not really like a process. It literally is just like
It's the ploof!
it's
ploof.
yeah.
It's like a swinger party, but for fish. Ugh.
Oh god.
But carry on. Moving on to the next question. But there we go, chat. That's how quickly they can breed. That is urchins that have not had any restrictions and just had a fun party. And yeah, millions. It's just, yeah, there's not enough slip slops to wear. But Georgie, yeah, sorry, next question.
I was waiting to
She's
see,
like,
see when you wanted me to pop in after that.
Sorry.
Yeah, no, it's all good. So the second question is: are there kelp-based products?
Oh yeah.
Nice.
So there's several, and I don't know if this is just like in my area, like, because I live in a very, well, Vancouver's a very like green type of area, and we're very like environmentally conscious here, and we live very close to things like kelp forest. But yeah, you can get lots of things. So anything from like toothpaste to shampoos and stuff like that, they do
Wow.
make them. Yeah, so I mean it's kelp based. It's, obviously there's going to be some other ingredients in there as
Yes.
well. But one of my favorite things, I don't know if you guys like Caesars or Bloody Marys, but there's a company up here that makes local pickled seaweed that goes in your like in your
Beverage.
Caesars or your Bloody Marys. So good. And I also love it's pickled bull kelp, I believe. And I also just love eating seaweed, like a seaweed salad. And seaweed's a little bit different than kelp, but yeah, I mean those types of products are awesome, and they're good for you too.
Yeah, they're more nutritious than lettuce.
Yeah,
That's what
and
you're saying. Yeah.
I love seaweed snacks. So yeah, you can absolutely find these things, and I think too when you're looking at this kind of stuff, you might need to do some research, like just because it says it's. And I think we're going to talk about this in a little bit, but just because it says it's green, like it doesn't necessarily mean that it's like. Also, is this soluble seaweed extract? I have no idea what that is. But yeah, so checking into these things and making sure before you buy them. But
Yeah, do research.
especially if you've got local companies that are doing things, then I think that
support them.
I think that's a really great thing to support too. And then you're not, your carbon emissions are quite low. But I love kelp and seaweed. I think that it's a great substitute for a lot of things and a very sustainable resource for the most part.
And someone even talked about kelp relish. I would try that. I'm allergic to seafood. I'm not allergic to seaweed. Yay! So kelp relish, that might sound interesting. It's supposed to be delicious.
That does sound really interesting.
But someone asked, actually leading back in that, has any, the way to put it, has anyone tried to like replenish kelp forests by almost like reintroducing them to barren areas? Planting them, if you may. Is there a reason? Does that exist? And if not, why not?
Yeah, I don't think that is a feasible option for a lot of places, and the reason being because if you put kelp in there, the sea urchins are just going to come and eat them.
Yeah, you have to have the otters there as backup.
Yeah, you need to have something that's going to eat the sea urchins, that's going to stop them from destroying all the kelp. So yeah, like I don't think that there's too many options for like reforesting of kelp forests just like manually because yeah, it's definitely a predation issue, and like they just get grazed down with it. You'd be surprised at how fast like a group of sea urchins can just mow down an entire kelp forest.
Yes. Simply,
it's almost as fast as they can reproduce.
Yes, exactly. They're having a fun, good old life, apparently. Just eating and doing that other thing from a distance. They're social distance lovers. But just Google sea urchin kelp forests, that sort of thing, and you will see how many there are at any one place and how fast they can actually eat a kelp forest. I mean, there's so many. Moving on to the next question, Georgie.
Next question it's a very broad question. What can I do to save coral reefs and kelp forests?
Nice question.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I mean, I think that I think one thing that we can do right now that I'm really going to be pushing, like you guys can expect to hear a lot from me about the Alaka Alliance, because that is our next charity. So I think going and supporting, they've got right now they have an open public sort of I guess like input period happening, because there are some people in these areas that are concerned that the introduction of sea otters is going to affect the fish populations, which I think it will. It's going to increase the fish populations,
yes,
but a lot of people don't really understand that. And so going and weighing in on these types of legislation and having these comment periods and this going and lending your voice to these things and supporting organizations like that are looking at reintroduction of a species that is going to allow kelp forests to prosper along our coast, I think is something that's really easy. You can do it in your pajamas.
Oh, that's even better.
Yeah. And so reading up on that information. I mean, do read up on it. Like, don't just take my word for it. Like, read the information and make sure that you do actually agree with things before you go and just be like, KP said I should say this is great. And yeah, lending your voice to projects like that. I think like, yeah, I think that those are really really good ways. Making sure that anytime you're buying any kind of seafood, making sure that the fishing practices are in line with environmentalism, because you don't really want like if they're trolling for fish, that's like literally just like a net that just like scrapes the bottom and like
catches everything.
Really, yeah, and just like absolutely eliminates like it disturbs the ocean bottom and will absolutely like rip up kelp and kelp forests and those types of things. So making sure that you're not eating things that are caught in that way from those types of fisheries, I think is a good way too. I think those are two pretty easy things that you can do to help.
And there's actually a lot of, I mean, I've noticed anywhere in the country, there's a lot of local businesses, even fishing, that exist. So many that you don't actually have to buy them from a corporation. If I can use that word very bluntly and very loosely, you don't have to.
I mean, and I think too, though, it's hard because we were just talking about this right before the stream that yes, you absolutely, like, there should be like local fisheries and stuff like that in your area, especially if you're living near the coast, right?
Yes.
It's a little bit harder if you live inland.
Oh, of course, yeah.
But it is I don't want to like I want to make sure that everybody knows that we are aware it's a thing of privilege for people to buy sustainable seafood. It does tend to be a little bit more expensive and those types of things. So that is, if you can, those are great things to do. And if you can't, like, it's understandable, but there's always something we can do, right? There's always a little something we can do. And so yeah, like I said, like going online and being active in legislation and stuff like that, and and whenever you can, yeah, in your pajamas, and whenever you can, supporting other organizations. Reha, go to bed. Reha's in my chat.
Oh my gosh, Reha.
Tell Reha to go to sleep.
Yes, please.
Reha's not feeling well.
You need to recover. We've got people here. Reha. But absolutely, I mean, even supporting things like the stream that you're going to be doing soon to drive charity. I mean, that's another way people can contribute as well. So just always remember that you don't have to be so 100% active on something. Doing these little things like you're doing now, supporting channels that are going to do charity drives, are also very big help. Look at what we did for just Monterey Bay on its own.
I know.
My gosh. But also, yeah,
I'm super excited to see what
that does.
What happens with Alaka Alliance. And what'll be really neat about the Alaka Alliance is that we should be able to follow it and to see like, hopefully we'll actually get to see sea otters introduced off of the Oregon coast,
so cool.
and yeah, and slowly watch that progress. I think that's really that's going to be really fun. So I'm super excited about it.
Okay. Moving on to the next question, Georgie. No, not Rhea, that should be asleep.
Actually, I wanted to sort of put in a question from chat from Bright Sparky, just because it kind of follows on. They said, how will introducing sea otters increase fish population?
Yeah, so that's we kind of touched up on it a little bit, but I just said that it would. But basically, what happens is the sea otters will eat the sea urchins, and then with the sea urchins gone, or at least decreased in numbers, that allows kelp forests to start to grow. And kelp forests are like a hub. Like, fish will find them because they're sheltered areas. They're places where fish want to be. So they will find those areas. They'll use them as spawning grounds. which will basically spawn enormous amounts of baby fish who then grow up into being bigger fish, and that's sort of the process behind
Yes.
why. So like just animals are drawn to the kelp forest because it is a very when you think about like the ocean, like finding shelter in the ocean is like probably not the easiest thing to do.
Yes.
And so animals like to feel sheltered, and to, especially if you're going to be raising your young in an area, or at least laying your eggs, you want it to be not just in the middle of the ocean where they're not likely to survive. So
Absolutely.
that's the short of how that would increase fish populations. Now, of course, it may not, like it may end up, it's not all going to be good. I'm sure that there will be things that, like animals that will, like we said, sea urchins will decrease. Perhaps there are some animals that really don't like the kelp forest, and will move away from the area. So it's a net positive. But of course there are trade-offs. So I don't doubt that there's probably some animals that will move away from the area if there's kelp forest. But all in all, it is very good for the environment.
Yeah. That's there you go. I think everyone has that question, but also obviously, the main thing is that also like sea urchins are a food supply for a lot of different animals. So that's their contribution. It's like we need kelp forests for sea urchins to eat, but at the same time we need things to eat the sea urchins. So it's again the circle of life. I think that's a very important thing. Moving on to the next question.
Next question. As you mentioned, there are, fishing practices that damage reef ecosystems. What are the best ways to avoid purchasing products that support this?
Yeah, so I think the hard part is like you always go to the store, you find yourself you're at the store, and you're not like in a position to, you're like, I just want to get done and be out of the store. So it does take some extra effort, but I think downloading something like the Seafood Watch app, which is from the Monterey Bay Aquarium, they have an app that's designed to do this for you, and you can literally scan an item, or you can search for a particular item. If you're looking at a type of fish, you just pop it into the thing and it'll tell you, oh, this is green, you go ahead and get this. This is fished for in a very sustainable way. Or this is red, this is this fish is caught by trolling, and so it damages reefs, things like that. So and some people popping into chat saying that the app is really really awesome and works really really well. So so that's something that even though it takes just a little bit more effort, I think if you can make a habit of it, it's a great thing to do. And if you don't have that app, I think that it might have a little bit of a harder time working in Canada, or I'm trying to remember if I've tried that one before, but a simple Google search will also usually help you out. Is blah 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 sustainable? I use it when I'm out eating sushi a lot. And unfortunately, some of my favorite things that I love to eat, I don't anymore because I know that they're not sustainable. Like monkfish liver, is so delicious, but it's so unsustainable. And some of my other sea bream is usually not super great. So so just by doing a simple Google search will also usually give you the correct answer if you're in a situation where you're like, oh, this looks delicious, but how is it for the environment? Yeah. And so making those types of choices, and honestly just like thinking about it, and even if you forget once in a while, like don't beat yourself up about it. Like this is okay. Like all it is making small changes until you're never where you want to be. Like we can always make smaller changes towards a goal, but like you make things a habit slowly, and then they become second nature to you. So so I think that is those are some really easy things, and like I said, if you forget once in a while, that happens. But as long as you're making an effort. I think that's what counts and what we should all be doing.
And I think this is that.
Oh yes, unagi. Unagi is another one of those things that's
It's
not
like, I
really
wanna
sustainable
eat,
to eat.
but I think there's also
But there's yeah.
the delusion that what you're doing, no matter how little it is not making a difference. But we don't consider that there's other people doing just as much, just as little collectively. I mean, everything that's happened with the world is because we've been doing little things collectively, good or bad. So it takes apparently 30 days to develop a habit. So if you do it for 30 days, afterwards it becomes part of your life. So that's the thing. I don't know. I got told that by my trainer one day, and apparently it's true.
No, yeah. I mean, yeah, and like you said too, like just if we're all making a tiny change, then it makes a big difference.
Yeah, it makes a big difference. But yes. Oh, but all these foods, and I'm like, I haven't had fish, seafood in all my life, so I don't know what I'm missing. So technically, my allergies are really contributing to the environment, even though it's on purpose.
There
See?
you go.
I'm naturally contributing. But yeah, I'm sure but in all favor, sometimes I smell seafood go past, and I'm like, I wish I wasn't allergic.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
they're spraying cotton with chemicals to make it. Oh, wow. Yeah, okay. Well, Donna, you just asked a question that's going to be covered in one of the questions following up in terms about chemicals and how it is affecting the ocean. But if we can move on to the next question there. Georgie, sorry. Reading my audience names.
Georgie, remember when you thought you were Georgette for like...
I know. I was like properly like debating whether to say anything. I was like, no, I'll just leave it. And I think Double mentioned. I was like,
He did. He was like, stop calling her Georgette. It's Georgie. And I was like, oh, I don't know. There's a T in it. What am I saying?
I know it's off topic, but I got taught in the cinema. It says that is the one thing you can be impolite about. If someone gets your name wrong, correct them immediately.
Yeah, for sure.
Because otherwise, they'll be stuck even when they remember your name. I was called for Justin for years, and I never corrected my teacher. So,
yeah.
Anyway, sorry. Going on to the question, Georgette.
Well, actually, the next question does sort of follow into what you were just talking about.
Yes.
Not names, but it's are there some fisheries that cause more problems with reef destruction and bycatch than others? And I was kind of interested in that as well. Like, what makes a fish species, unsustainable?
Yeah, so it usually revolves around the fishing practices that are needed to catch a certain type of fish. So typically, if you're eating something that says that it was line caught, you can pretty safely guess that is a very sustainable option for you. Because if it's line caught, it's literally caught one by one typically. So you're like, when you think about that as opposed to like a net that's just dragging like along the ocean floor catching thousands and thousands of fish, like that's a typically extremely sustainable type of fishing practice. So that's usually what makes it more sustainable versus less sustainable is the actual fishing practice. However, there are some species that like what if your favorite type of seafood only breeds like once every 5 years, and you're eating it once a week? Like, you can kind of, and that's an extreme example, but like that's, so that's kind of what we were talking about with sea urchins. Why sea urchins are so sustainable and why sea otters literally can't keep up with them is because of the way that they breed, that broadcast breeding.
Yes, broadcast breeding, like, yes.
Very prolific sea urchins, but if certain animals do it a little differently, and that can make a difference. It can also make a difference where the animal is, like potentially. They have a very strong population when they're like up in Alaska, and eating Alaskan caught whatever is more sustainable than eating California caught whatever.
Yes.
I'm just throwing out examples here. So that's why it's really nice to have the that app, that Monterey Bay Aquarium.
I think that's such a decent
Seafood
app,
Watch
yes.
app. because it's going to do all of this research for you. Like, you don't need to look into all of these things. You don't need to know anything about these things. You just need to trust that Monterey Bay Aquarium is looking into it for you. And so, I mean, I still think it's important to like have a basic understanding of these types of things. But yeah, typically if you look for line caught foods, that's going to be a good option.
Like lionfish of the day.
Yeah. And anytime you're got like, you know, if you have if you live near the coast and you have the opportunity to, you know, to eat like fish that you've caught yourself. I mean, you know where it comes from and that it's sustainable, but of course that's not an option for everyone. So, so yeah, I mean, I think that those are some of the factors that play a role, but there's so many things that that go into what makes a certain type of fish sustainable or not. So that's why it's nice to have somebody else do the work for you.
Absolutely, that's an ingenious app. But just I can see the conversation in my chat as well. It's like, definitely, folks, we're not telling you that you must stop eating fish at all. I think KP's main message is do your research beforehand and see what you can support locally.
Eating some types of fish can be great for the environment. And like I said, eating sea urchin.
Oh, right? Yeah, the creamy sea urchin. Delicious on the spines. You can pick your teeth afterwards.
Well, you don't eat the spines.
I know. I'm just imagining the worst scenario. It's just, I'm not. But
it's so delicious. Don't knock it till you try it.
Well, I can't try it.
You're probably deathly allergic. Yeah.
Well, I love when people say, like, how do you still know you're allergic to fish? I'm going to trust with the fates and the gods. And
yeah, well, I mean, it's one of those things where it's like, is it worth trying? I don't really know, you know?
I mean, there's actually places that actually now, which I don't think why isn't bigger, especially in South Africa, there are fish farms and crab farms. So these are domestically created. They don't actually take it out the sea, but it's actually I've been on a tour. It's not like the chicken kind of farm where you're like, oh my god, they've been treated so badly. It's actually a very natural thing, and you can go there, watch the fish grow. Some of them actually get released apparently, and then the rest of it you can literally like order from the tank. So I think it's kind of weird, but it's something.
No, I mean, and sometimes farmed seafood is a great way to go, but again, that's another one of the things that you have to
do your research.
Yeah, because some farmed seafood is actually quite bad for the environment just because of the way that they're doing it and you know, stuff like that. So yeah, it's such a complex issue, but I'm definitely not saying to not eat seafood. I love seafood, and I think that you know, it's the same with like I'm not a vegetarian. Like I totally eat meat, but we try to make sure that it's local and sustainable and those types of things. So I think that those should be your main focuses. And but yeah, I mean, I think it's a great thing for us to be talking about and a great thing for people to be thinking about in their everyday lives.
Fair enough. Is sea urchin something you can buy in the store in certain places?
Is sea urchin?
If you're going to eat sea urchin, is it something you have to buy for specifically a restaurant, or is it something that you can
you can... I mean, depending on where you are. Yeah. We've had live sea urchin, like our local seafood market sells live local sea urchin, and then Double will like process it himself, and we've eaten it that way. You definitely can. It's much easier at a restaurant, but yeah, no, I mean you can buy it from stores.
So there was a setup question to be like, the next time you were just to a cooking stream, maybe that's one of the very weird things you could do. I'd watch it just for the interest. I just want to see how these things are prepared and made and look.
Well, we'll see. That's not a bad idea, actually.
But yeah, okay. Sorry, Georgie, moving on to the next question.
No worries. So the next question is, are there products that are harmful to kelp forests and coral reefs that should be avoided? For example, one person asked about sunscreen chemicals.
Yeah. Yes. So sunscreen is coming out as one of the foremost like damaging things for coral reefs. There are types of sunscreen that are better than others. So, and I honestly I couldn't tell you what exactly that is, but if you like a simple Google search should bring up, hey, look at this little fish. What is that? Look at that little guy.
What are you
Sorry,
streaming?
on our live
No, I
camera,
need to
there's
see.
he's like a strange. Anyway, so there are different types of sunscreens that don't necessarily have those harmful chemicals in them. The other thing is that's so hard is like probably what the biggest problem for the coral reefs are right now is actually ocean acidification, which is a direct result of global warming. So
Is
that's
that
a hard problem
bleaching?
to tackle. So yeah, I mean, but anything that we can do to help. So yeah, buying proper sunscreen. I don't know which kind it is, but this is becoming a very, like, people are now well aware of this issue. So non-damaging sunscreens are becoming more and more popular. But yeah, it's they're just so fragile. Like, because coral reefs, you guys know that the corals are actual living organisms, right? They're it's like a congregation of living organisms. They're not even a plant. They're like an actual animal. And so they're like all living together in like this like really interesting sort of harmony, and it's such a fragile thing. It's why you're not supposed to touch them at all, because like just one touch from a human can like kill the entire thing. So yeah, not hard to imagine that like people swimming around in like with sunscreen could potentially damage those things. So yeah, I mean there are specific types of sunscreen that you can wear, and just being like really aware. I mean, like snorkeling and stuff like that, you just really don't want to be getting too close to these areas, like watching from afar, and those types of things are definitely better for the environment than getting up in there and like trying to grab things and touch things, for sure.
Absolutely, and that's it's the easy thing. If you can't identify what you're touching or you don't understand it, don't touch it. It's because it could be as dangerous for you as it is for them.
Just don't touch anything. Yeah,
just don't touch it.
Just don't touch.
It's like when you walk in the shopping
mall. But it's
mall,
such a human thing.
dude,
like
yes.
We always want to touch.
Absolutely. That's why when you grow up, you're like, don't touch anything when you walk into the store. It's like this natural affiliation. You just want to put your hands everywhere, but just don't do it. But I mean, I'm glad my anxiety. If ever I've been diving or snorkeling, and it's very easy. I was like, I'm not going to touch that. I can identify what that swishy thing in the water is. It could be alive. And as we just found out, it probably was. Yeah. So my years of anxiety, I'm like, listen, 10 years later, KP told me there was a good idea, I didn't touch it. It probably was alive. It's gone full circle. But yeah, moving on.
Next question is, what animals eat corals?
There's like some types of fish eat coral. Like I think it's like the parrotfish. I think the parrotfish eats coral.
That's maybe why the ball was made like that. I think there's something that cracks through things.
Yeah, I think maybe some types of sea star eat coral as well. Because they just like sea stars like exude their stomach and then they just digest it, and then they just like it's kind of weird. They have like external digestion.
Yes.
So I think I'm literally just, I'm not making this up, but that's just like things that come to my mind in the back of my head. But I'm not a fish expert, and certainly not a coral reef expert. But I believe those are two animals that definitely do eat coral.
I mean, we just discussed sea urchins that eat forest. Do they
really
not
sure
also eat coral?
It's a good question. I don't honestly know. And I don't. Yeah, no, it's an interesting question. I don't even know too. Has anybody ever eaten a sea star? Can you eat sea stars? Are they weird?
I'm sure someone has tried it.
Yeah, I know you can eat sea cucumber. I've eaten sea cucumber before.
But the thing is, just because you can doesn't mean you should. Yes, you can. And of course,
you're afraid of eating fun, interesting things. I'm sure sea star can
It
be
may
eaten
seem
and is
fun, but I'm like,
delicious.
why? Listen, I am a land creature. It was, but apparently
Okay.
you can, and the first thing that comes up, you can find them in China markets. You can eat sea stars.
Georgie, I need
Ugh.
to hear more about this parrotfish encounter.
Ooh,
Yeah.
yes, please.
Well, I was at a beach and everyone was like handing out, I think it was like melons to the parrotfish. It was like a
Oh.
supposedly fun kind of trying to get the parrotfish to swim towards you kind of thing. I didn't find it fun. It saw me as melon and just bit me.
Oh my god, and they have such a big
Where?
beak.
Where did it bite you? That it was like, that's a melon. Just asking for a friend.
Yes.
Part of my swimming costume had like moved slightly, so I think where like the tan line was, it thought yeah, the paler part was melon.
Did it bite your ass? Like,
Possibly, yes.
yes.
Possibly. That's a yes.
It was like, this bitch has melons under here.
Well, how many people can say I've been bitten by a parrotfish? I am sorry, but you can't make that stuff up. On the ass, yeah. Well,
I
the
was
fun
like
story.
11, and it was like I was scarred. Like, I mean, not me physically,
Mentally.
but like
Yeah.
mentally, I was scarred.
Because you'll never
Yeah, I
forget
don't
that.
like parrotfish anymore. Whenever I see one, I'm just like, no.
That's amazing. That's amazing.
Gosh.
You did battle with a with a parrotfish. That's
Yeah,
amazing.
well, my mum just said that there was like a whole kerfuffle by me, and it was just like it was just like a whole sort of puff of like sand and everything where I scuffled about and the
And then
parrotfish
boom.
was scuffling about as well.
Well,
It was a mess.
you don't need to hate parrotfish. What you actually need to hate is melons. Because
Yeah.
that was if that had never happened, that parrotfish would have left you alone.
Yeah. Parrotfish hadn't discovered their love
Yes.
for melons,
They're
then
like,
they would have left your
that's
ass
round
out
in
of
the same
there.
shape. Bloop.
Exactly. I think they suddenly saw like the, I don't know, coloured. I don't know. I mean,
I'm so glad I asked about this story. That was better
Yes.
than I could have ever thought. I thought it just bit your finger or something. That was much better.
I had one of...
Yeah, I didn't come into this in anticipating to tell that story.
Well,
Yeah,
we mentioned
well, that's
parrotfish and what they eat. And
This is the best part about this stream is that you
Yes.
can never anticipate where this is going to go.
that is the danger.
Yeah.
That is
Yeah,
the
that was-
danger.
Yeah, and then for some people are asking, yeah, I would say sea stars and starfish are essentially the same thing. I'm just like trying to get away from calling them
Oh, I was
starfish
gonna
because
ask. Yes.
they're not actually fish.
Did
It's
you
kind
not
of like
watch
a
KP's
misnomer.
videos? Not a fish. Not
My
a fish.
little,
Yes.
my little, short videos. But yeah, so that's the reason why I'm being confusing and saying they're sea stars because it's
Well, KP, I caught on. I was like, I watched your
know.
video and I'm like, I'm not gonna say
I'm
starfish.
not trying to be snobby. I'm actually trying to do it like for myself, like to
Yes.
try to remember that
They're not
it's not a
fishes.
starfish.
Well, I learned a lot from your videos about the non-fish things, and I'm like, ugh. I was already over
I was going to
false
drop.
killer whale.
I was definitely gonna drop the echinoderms earlier, Golganek, but then I was like, no, that's being way too snobby. I should I gotta like rein in the marine biologist snob kind of situation.
Like, you shouldn't be calling it that. Just do that voice
Yeah.
from now on. It shouldn't be... That'll get you points. Oh gosh. But just very quickly, folks, things that eat carfish, parrotfish, they also eat unknown melons that are actually bums. Crown of thorns sea star. By the way, they even call it sea star here on this website. So
Well, sea star is kind of
It's
a
a
little bit more
starfish.
acceptable
Yeah.
than starfish. However, my chat is reminding me that they are not, in fact, actual astrological stars either. So
oh, come on.
So
Well,
yeah,
It's not... a parrotfish is not actually a parrot, people. A butterfly fish is not actually a butterfly. And then nudibranches. What? Nudibranches.
nudibranchs.
Nudibranchs. Okay, I just see branch.
Nudibranches.
Nudibranch. Okay, nudibranchs. I've never heard of that in my life. And it's a type of sea slug. Okay. Nudibranch.
Yeah, nudibranchs. They're actually really cool
Nudibranches.
animals. A nudibranch.
They're branches that are nude. But okay, so I've learned something new now today. I was like, what? But yeah. Okay. Quickly moving on to the next subject to distract us from our stupidity.
No, it's good. That's why we're learning. We're learning.
Okay. Next one is about artificial reefs. Someone said there are some places where old oil rigs, where the pump is sealed, or ships or garbage are not removed and provide habitat for reef ecosystems.
Oh yes.
Is this actually good or is it greenwashing?
Oh, nice word. Okay,
Yeah. Good question. And I'm not going to 100% say that I know for sure. But I do think they're good options. Because to like reinstate coral reefs, like this type of stuff takes like decades for corals to grow. Like it is not it's not like kelp forests where it could, kelp grows very, very quickly. To have these corals grow, first of all, you have to have the proper environment, and secondly, it takes a very, very long time to have any significant type of coral growth. So having items that are also suitable for fish to use as their homes, because again, this is the same thing as the kelp forest. All these fish are using this as an area to eat, as an area that they are safe, they're sheltered, they can breed in this area because it's not just like a barren rock area.
Yeah.
So I think that done in the proper way, like artificial
Yes.
coral is a great option, and ultimately, hopefully, if that the environment is improving, then coral can grow on top of artificial artificial items
Yes.
that are down there. So that's my instinct about it, without to be honest with you, without honestly having a lot of information to back that up. But that's my instinct about that. I don't know if you guys have any other ideas or thoughts.
There's actually a very nice series on Netflix, and I can't remember the name. It actually was a World War II thing and about Navy ships, because I don't know why I was watching that. But there's actually some things where when they retire old ships, I forget which, I don't know if it was Canada or US, one of the two, that actually sink Navy ships. They empty it out, they take all the oil, they sink it at certain locations, and then they showed what they've done in like the 80s and 90s and what it is like now. And even though, as KP said, there's not like corals heavily growing in it, but the sea population that is now using that ship that has sunk as a home and a habitat is absolutely mind-blowing. Sharks, everything, just swimming in it. And they don't just randomly go out and see and blow it up. They actually choose locations. They say, this is the place that's going to sustain life. This is the place that's going to help. And then they sink the ship there. So that's one of the things. And it's the Navy that did that. But I'll try to find the thing on Netflix. It was me sleeping in and out and moving on to when the autoplay.
Yeah.
The next thing I woke up, I was like, what are they thinking ships? Oh, they're turning it into a fish habitat. It's like, so that is something. That's also where I learned about the coral reefs bleaching, which made me scared, because it's apparently a very quick growing thing that's happening at the moment.
I'd be really curious. Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
Also, I'd be really curious to know whether any of the degradation
Yes.
of the ships has an effect on the marine life and like the quality of the
like
ocean.
the rust and stuff.
The one thing is
Yeah.
apparently things age a lot longer when it's underwater. They don't oxidize as much as you think. So a lot of the stuff is that they've actually shown, if you go down to the bottom of the ocean, even in the Bermuda Triangle where there's planes down there, not because of aliens, but if they actually scrape the coral off, a lot of it is still very new. It's not rusted because it's not oxidized because of the oxygen. It's actually perfectly fine. It's a weird thing, and it takes apparently like a good 1,000 years for it to actually deteriorate in such a way. But yeah, nothing actually popped up in the show. But it is a very good question. Research, people. Google.
Yeah,
Good
it's a hard thing because you probably you could always find something bad that goes along with something good. So it's a matter of weighing things. But my instinct is that artificial coral is actually a good idea. But yeah, that is just just sort of my personal opinion. I'm happy if anybody has any other information or share things with me. Always happy to be corrected as long as you're right.
But of course, we're not the final part of information. We're just another option. So, as KP said earlier, always do your research. Definitely don't take my word for things. I mean, I learned my information from Netflix. Okay, so do we have any more questions?
That's a good question, though.
Yeah, it is.
This is the last one, and I will round it out. Oh God, I can't talk. I will say it verbatim. It is, Finding Dory was a lie. Some tropical species like blue tang, Dorian family, cannot be captive bred. Are there some species that are better options for home aquariums and some species like blue tang that should always be avoided?
Yeah, and so to be honest, I probably people in the chat know a little bit better than I do about keeping your own aquariums at home. I will agree that Finding Dory was probably not a scientific factual based documentary. I think it was not not really intended to be so. But it does, unfortunately, it gives people I understand the sentiment, because it, like, you try to make a cartoon and hope that people understand the difference between reality, and that you can't just go out and buy a bunch of dories and hope to have them live like in your bathtub at home, but some people don't have the critical thinking skills to, like, for instance, my TikTok, I swear to you, like, half of the comments are like are just like absolute nonsense about, like, oh, you shouldn't be like harassing the wildlife, or like, how come you're not giving the sea otters food and they only eat ice? And I'm like, well, clearly that's not what, like, like, use your brains, people, and stuff like that. And I'm like, I can't even tell you how many times I have to comment, okay, this is clearly not a wild animal.
Yes.
Please don't touch wild animals. But it's like, no, some people don't, and it takes one click to click on my profile and realize that I'm a marine mammal trainer, and that these animals are under human care, and I'm not just harassing random wildlife. But you'd be surprised at the type of people. So I totally get the sentiment of, like, and actually Finding Nemo and Finding Dory did cause big problems for tropical fish, because people wanted to have those animals at home, and that was obviously not the intention of the movie. But those are the unintended consequences of like, it's hardly spreading misinformation. Like, it's silly that people would look at that and go, I want to, and the amount of people that look at my TikTok and go, I want to have a sea otter as a pet now, and I'm like, well, maybe what?
Yes.
But
see where the sea otter is first to understand.
Yeah. So, but anyway, but that did cause a big problem, and that brings up an interesting point about tropical aquariums, because that is definitely a problem for some species of fish, is that they can only be collected, they can't really be bred, and there's a high demand for them, such as blue tangs. And so when you when those animals are only found in areas that are not necessarily, they're not necessarily protected by the government, that you run into an issue of overfishing those guys, not for food, in a little bit of a different way, but for zoos and aquariums, like that is a big problem. So as far as whether, I know that there are other better options for species, but again, that's going to take some private research that I would hope that anybody who was going to, like, open up, oh look, there's that funny little guy again, he just swam away. Like, I would hope that anybody who was going to endeavor to, we've talked about this before, own exotic animals, or even own domesticated animals, is going to do extensive research.
You have to.
Because it's not like you can't just buy these fish and just dump them in a tank at home. Like, I don't know a lot about
the water.
fish.
You can't just put tap water in there. You have to let it stand,
but
and all
I
these
do
different
know
things.
Yeah, I do know that you have to, you have to acclimate the fish for like 4 hours,
Yes.
like all this stuff. So, So yeah. So anyway, I don't know specifically what types of species could be used instead, but it's definitely a problem. I mean, it's the same thing where like right around Easter time, everybody buys a freaking bunny,
Yeah.
and then they don't realize that they live for 10 years and that you can't keep them in a cage, and so it like yeah, these types of things are
Unfortunately, that's a bad
definitely
thing.
a problem.
So many
Yeah, and
people that have owned bunnies have like chewed wires and they get upset at the bunny. I'm like, they rabbits and you should look up. It's a terrible thing, as you said. It's no research.
Yeah.
It's impulse buys.
Yeah. Well, and it's, the internet is an amazing place. First of all, you shouldn't trust everything that you find on the internet. However, there's a lot of useful information on the internet, and if you know where to look, you can help make yourself informed about any kind of decision
Absolutely.
that you want to make. And I don't think that like having a saltwater aquarium at home, I think is a really cool hobby if you
But it
if you
needs to
have
be
the
a
time,
sustainable
the
hobby.
dedication, and yeah,
need to
and
dedicate it to
and
it.
the know-how to do it. And I think that's really cool. But Mini Mama here is saying that clownfish are captive bred, so maybe
Yeah.
maybe those guys are a little bit more of a sustainable option for people. Maybe even just making sure that the fish that you have, the tropical fish that you have, are captive bred is an option. But
someone just
yeah, I don't know too much about keeping these guys.
Someone just posted in my chat, why have a fish tank when you can just stream them? When you can
Yeah.
have a live stream. I'm like, that is a good alternative.
Well,
Like
that's
live
true.
streaming fire. But
Yeah.
But it's also about, I mean, someone even put other Disney movies that cause a lot of problem. It's about context. And this is one of the things that in my own profession, that context is very important, and it's very easy to draw your own narrative from anything. I mean, that's why we have so many different versions of Bibles, if I can even bring that, so many different versions of opinion. Some people will watch Finding Nemo, and there's a whole bunch of scenes where fish are trying to escape aquariums, and the first thing that pops in your mind is, I want that fish in an aquarium. I'm like, did you not watch the movie? I know it's like a fake story. You're not going to get a fish bouncing across your table to get into the water, but the whole concept of people buying fish based on the movie that was trying to demonstrate how you should leave fish alone is the irony behind it. It's like,
I know, it's so ridiculous. But yeah, but I mean, there's not a lot of it takes effort to educate yourself and
Yes.
and to be informed, and a lot of people don't have have the desire to
do
exercise
it.
that effort. So
It's like
yeah.
the movie Spirit, that was about a horse that was breaking free from captivity with Native Americans, and then apparently everyone wanted ponies after that. I'm like, did you not watch the movie? It was about a horse wanting to be free. It's silly things like that. But yeah, so that was the last question. Just very quickly, we have some information of Georgie's questions about when they sink ships for artificial coral reefs. There's a very good article here. It's actually, it's Forbes. So I don't know. But it says here, in every single case where an artificial reef has been created, this has followed years of careful cleaning and decontamination of a wreck, particularly the toxic anti-fouling paints used around the hulls of vessels, that red stuff, as well as careful planning and surveying of the site or reef. Before deciding where to release the wreck and how it is safe to do so in a way without the deep water currents taking metaparticles into areas that could create additional pollution and harm. So apparently it takes years of planning before they actually sink the ship.
That's reassuring.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, it is. I think obviously, knowing that there's a lot of thought that goes behind it, you have to assume that there's a lot of research going behind it as well.
So there we go.
So yeah, so those are kind of like our opinion, and based on like really quick research, seems to suggest that artificial reefs are well thought out and hopefully good, and not necessarily just greenwashing.
But there we go. I mean, you're going to get different articles. So just do the research, folks. I see on my links, artificial reefs, good. Just the disadvantages of artificial coral reefs. There's so much information, but it's worth taking some time after this. We hope you learned something, and then go do your research after this. But yeah,
I mean, there's always going to be, like we said, a positive and a negative to everything that happens. But yeah.
But just before we end off, guys, Monterey Bay has a very, very nice kelp forest live stream if you want to go watch it. It is actually quite fascinating. I don't know if it's the same pool as the otters are. It is rather deep, but we also got someone on camera that is using a very, very tiny little squeegee to clean this huge window. It's hilarious. If you can see it on my stream. But that's from Monterey Bay, so if you guys want to go take a look at it, please give them some support as well. otherwise, yeah, thank you very much, everyone. And
Yeah.
thank you, Georgie, for helping us once again. You are a star.
No worries.
And hopefully Ray is getting her rest if she can hear us in
Hopefully she can't hear us because hopefully she's
she's asleep.
sleeping.
Yes. But yeah. Thank you very much everyone for joining. KP, will you be streaming after this?
I am going to, yes.
Yes.
I've got some new merch that I want to peep. I want to show people.
Oh, you want to give it a little peep?
So
When you're playing Oregon Trail again, someone mentioned it today, and I was like,
I don't know. We could maybe play today. We'll see. I've got to plan that, but that's.
But yeah, everyone.
Yeah, well, definitely for the charity, for sure.
If you want to cross over to KP's stream, I think we have a... Yeah, by the way, thank you, Tessa, by the way, for also moderating as normal. She just dropped a donate to Monterey Bay link. But I'll drop your link so everyone can go watch and look at that new merch. We also have some new merch, by the way, so follow our Discord. Everyone's got new merch. Support us. It's their way of supporting us as creators. And also... I don't know if KP, I'm sure you do, KP. We also donate to charity with the proceeds, but support. Get some new merch.
Yeah.
Get some new merch. But anyway, thank you so much, Georgie.
Right.
Thank you so much, KP. And we will see you all soon.
See you later.
All right. So from our side, everyone, thank you very much for joining. And that's just KP gone. There's a dolphin picture. But yeah, folks. Thank you so much for your support and time with everything that we do. As you can see, there is some new merch that Tiny Tube has put up, and we'll be holding some competitions during the week. We are trying to do something that we also, as mentioned, anytime you buy a thing on Teespring, we are donating to the Manatee Club, and we will be doing a stream very soon for donations. And we're thinking about sticking to Monterey Bay, but if you have any suggestion, folks, because we also want to do things for kittens and dogs, there's so many charities we want to do for. Please let us know in our Discord chat of who you'd like to see us support. We generally are focusing on more animal-based charities and environmental-based charities. So I know some of you have given charities that are human-based. It's nothing towards humans in it, but you know, at the end of the day, again, humans have a far wider choice than humans. So we would love to support animals that don't have a choice. I mean, every single creature on this planet exists based on human decisions, whether we allow them to exist or don't allow them to exist, good or bad. If you actually think about it, every single animal exists because we're generally giving them some sort of entitled permission, which is scary. It is very scary that they exist based on our actions. But thank you very much for joining us, everyone. We will catch you next time. Tomorrow we're doing another stream. But let's go see, and don't leave the channel. We can raid straight from my side if you're on Twitch. So if you're on Twitch, you don't need to leave. We will raid KP because it helps her channel, it helps our channel. And we will see you next time. And as always, put your noses to the screen because this has been the stream.